Oh my god, what just happened? The ground shook just a little, but enough to send a chill through Ion's body. The birds in the trees scattered, flying off in all directions, making the air feel heavy with something ... wrong. Ion turned his head. Everything in the sanctuary had gone quiet. Too quiet. Ravi, the huge bull that everyone loved and trusted, was standing still, not eating, not grazing like usual. His eyes were wide, his ears flicking nervously. The bull's head was lifted, sniffing the air, muscles tensed as if he could feel something coming. Ion's heart started racing. Something wasn't right. He could feel it deep in his gut. The jungle, the animals, everything, it all felt off today. Ravi took a few nervous steps, then stopped. His hooves dug into the soft earth, like he was trying to stand his ground, but his body was shaking. Ion didn't hesitate. He rushed over, his eyes never leaving Ravi. Ravi, what's wrong? Ion murmured to himself. And then, just as quickly as it started, the air went still again. Ion looked around, searching for the cause, but all he could see was the thick jungle, quiet and motionless. It was like the world had stopped for a second. Then came the sound. A low, rustling hiss. A faint noise at first, but growing louder with every passing second. Ion froze. The ground beneath him seemed to vanish. His eyes darted around, trying to find the source. But it was too late. Out from the dense trees, a massive python emerged. Long, thick body, slithering through the underbrush with a terrifying silence. Its eyes were cold, unblinking, and locked onto Ravi. Ion's breath caught in his throat. No, no way, he whispered. Ravi saw it too. The bull's body stiffened, his eyes widening with fear. The python moved quickly, too quickly, and in one deadly strike, it lunged at Ravi, wrapping its powerful body around the bull's neck. Ravi let out a loud, desperate bellow. Ion's legs felt like they were made of stone. He couldn't move, couldn't think. His mind screamed for action, but he was frozen in place. The snake was tightening its grip. Ravi was struggling, kicking, trying to break free. But the python's coils were like iron. Every move he made only made the snake's grip stronger. Ion yelled for help, but the words felt like they couldn't reach anyone. Ravi was fighting for his life, and Ion could only watch. Ravi's roars of pain echoed through the jungle, making the trees shudder. His powerful legs kicked helplessly, but the snake's coils were tightening with every movement. Ion's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the bull struggle, the massive creature fighting for breath. Somebody help, Ion shouted, his voice shaking. The other rangers were rushing toward him now, but they were just as helpless. The python was too strong, too fast. Ion ran toward the bull, but he was stopped in his tracks by the sheer size of the snake. Its coils were like thick ropes, holding Ravi in a vice-like grip. Every time Ravi managed to push back, the snake constricted even more. The bull's once powerful body was now trembling, his breath coming in gasps. Ion could see the fear in his eyes, something he'd never thought he'd witnessed in Ravi. The rangers were shouting, trying to figure out what to do, but Ion didn't care about anything else. He had to save Ravi, get the tranquilizer. One of the rangers called out, but even as he said it, it felt like a wasted hope. A tranquilizer wasn't going to stop this monster. Ion's mind was spinning. Think. He had to do something. He wasn't just going to stand there and watch Ravi die. Suddenly, Ravi let out a blood-curdling scream. The bull's entire body jerked as the snake squeezed even tighter, its muscles rippling along its length. Ion's stomach dropped. He had to act now, Ravi. Ion screamed, rushing forward. He grabbed a large branch from the ground and swung it at the snake's body. The branch cracked against the python's scales, but it didn't even flinch. The snake's grip didn't loosen. Ion tried again, swinging harder this time, but it was no use. The snake's strength was unmatched. It was too focused, too determined to let go. The sound of Ravi's breathing grew shallow. The bull's body was slowly losing its strength. His legs started to give way, buckling beneath him, and the python only squeezed harder. Ion could see the bull's massive body weakening. It was a sight that shattered him. Ravi had always been their protector, the one who stood tall, unafraid. And now, the bull was in the fight of his life. Ion's mind raced. What could he do? He can't die like this. Then, in the distance, he heard a sound, a roar. Not from Ravi, not from the snake. It was something else. Something ... familiar. Ion's eyes snapped toward the jungle's edge. The roar echoed again, louder this time. It wasn't just any animal. It was a human. Shout! Ion's heart skipped a beat. Could it be ... The snake's coils tightened, and Ravi let out a final, desperate gasp. His legs buckled again, and he collapsed to his knees, his great body heaving. The python was suffocating him, and the bull's massive form was slowly becoming limp under the crushing pressure. Ion felt the world around him blur. He couldn't think straight. His mind screamed at him to do something, anything to stop the snake, but nothing worked. His hand tightened around the branch, his knuckles white with frustration. The other rangers were helpless, too far away to do anything effective. Then, from the trees, a figure appeared, moving fast, almost like a shadow. Ion's breath caught. It wasn't another ranger. It wasn't anyone from the sanctuary. It was a figure he didn't recognize. The person moved with incredible speed and confidence, darting between the trees and making their way toward the fight. Ion blinked, confused for a moment. But then something clicked. It's the tracker. Arvind, the mysterious man who had lived in the jungle longer than anyone could remember, had appeared out of nowhere. He was the one person who knew the wilderness inside out, the one who had survived everything, from wild animals to the dangers of the jungle that no one else dared to face. Arvind's eyes locked on the scene in front of him. He didn't flinch. He didn't hesitate. He was already moving, pulling something from his belt, something shiny, dangerous. Ion's stomach tightened as he realized what it was. A sharp, curved knife. Without a word, Arvind charged at the snake. His every move was calculated, precise. He was like an animal himself, quick, fearless. The other rangers stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The python hissed as Arvind approached, but the snake was too focused on its prey to notice the man. Moving in Arvind's face was a mask of determination as he raised the knife. With a swift, calculated motion, he plunged it toward the snake's thick coils, aiming directly for the heart. The python's grip loosened just for a moment. A small opening, but enough. Ravi took a deep breath, gasping as if he were waking from a nightmare. Ion watched, his heart pounding in his chest. The bull wasn't done yet. He wasn't finished. The snake recoiled slightly, but it wasn't defeated. Arvind was moving faster now, darting between the snake's attacks and slicing at its body with quick, skilled cuts. The python let out a loud, angry hiss, but the pain was starting to show. The man's strikes were beginning to weaken it. Slow it down. Ravi let out a sound that almost seemed like a moan, his legs shaking as he tried to push the snake off of him. Ion saw his chance. Ravi! Ion yelled, urging the bull to rise, to fight. The sound of his voice seemed to snap something in the bull. With a deep, rumbling roar, Ravi surged forward with everything he had left, using the last of his strength to push the python away. The snake was no match for the bull's power, and it uncoiled, hissing in pain. But it wasn't done yet. The snake was still dangerous, and it was angrier than ever. The battle was far from over. As Ravi took a few shaky steps back, still gasping for air, the python reeled itself back, ready to strike again. Its eyes were burning with rage, its long, muscular body coiling and uncoiling like a spring, poised for a final, deadly move. Ion's heart raced. Ravi was clearly exhausted, his breath shallow, his huge body trembling. The bull had fought valiantly, but Ion could see that his strength was nearly gone. He had just enough left to get himself to his feet, but not much more. Arvind didn't hesitate. His eyes locked onto the snake, and with the precision of a seasoned hunter, he moved in again, his knife glinting in the fading light. He was relentless, darting between the snake's strikes, the blade flashing as it met the python's scales with a sickening thud. The snake hissed in pain, but it wasn't giving up. Ravi, still recovering from the brutal constriction, took another step forward, his muscles straining. Ion rushed to his side, gripping the bull's massive shoulder, his fingers trembling. He knew the bull wasn't going to last much longer if the snake got another hold. The python lunged again, this time faster, aiming straight for Ion. Time seemed to slow down as the massive serpent darted toward him, its mouth wide, its fangs gleaming. Ion barely had time to react, his body frozen with fear. The snake's speed was terrifying. But then, just as the python's jaws were about to snap shut around him, a sharp, quick motion of Vin's knife. It struck the python with deadly accuracy, slicing through its thick skin near the base of its skull. The snake let out a guttural hiss, the sound more like a scream than anything natural. It recoiled, writhing violently, its tail smashing into the ground. Ravi seized the opportunity, his hooves digging into the earth as he charged forward with a last burst of energy. With one final mighty shove, The bull slammed his body into the snake, forcing it away from Ion. The python twisted and snapped, but it was too weak now. The cuts from Arvin's blade and the force of Ravi's charge had left it vulnerable. The snake's movements were sluggish, its hisses quieter. Ravi let out a low, exhausted grunt as he backed away, his massive body trembling under the strain. He was alive. He had fought for his life and won, but at what cost? His energy was almost gone. Ion reached out, gently stroking the bull's neck, his heart still pounding. "You did it, Ravi. You did it," he whispered, voice filled with relief and gratitude. The snake, now weak and battered, finally slithered away, disappearing into the shadows of the jungle. The rangers stood frozen, watching as the battle ended. They could hardly believe what they had just witnessed. Arvin stood a few feet away, watching the snake vanish. His face was calm, though his eyes showed signs of the danger they had just faced. He wiped the blood from his knife, sheathing it with a swift motion, and turned toward Ion and the others. "It's over," he said simply. Ravi's body swayed slightly, and Ion stepped forward, ready to support him. "We need to get you back to the barn, big guy. You're safe now." But as Ion walked with Ravi, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a random attack. The jungle was wild, unpredictable, but something about this felt different. The snake wasn't just hunting for food. It had been after something about Ravi that Ion couldn't yet understand. As he looked back at Arvind, the tracker's face was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp, as if he too knew that this was only the beginning of something much bigger. The walk back to the barn felt endless. Ravi's steps were slow, his body heavy, and Ion could feel the weight of everything that had just happened pressing down on him. His heart was still racing from the fight. He couldn't stop replaying the battle in his mind. The snake had almost killed Ravi. If Arvind hadn't shown up when he did, Ayan glanced over at the tracker, walking silently behind them. There was something unsettling about the way Arvind was holding himself. His eyes never stopped scanning the jungle, his every move calm and deliberate, as though he knew something the rest of them didn't. "Arvind, Ion started, his voice low. "What was that? Why did the snake attack Ravi like that?" The tracker didn't answer right away. He only glanced at Ion, his expression unreadable. "I don't know," he said at last, his voice steady. "But I've been watching this jungle for a long time. That snake, it didn't act like a normal predator." Ion's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Arvind hesitated, then motioned for Ion to continue walking. He fell in beside him as they moved through the dense brush. Most snakes, especially pythons, they hunt smaller prey. They don't target something as big as Ravi, unless they're desperate, or driven by something. Ion felt a cold shiver run down his spine. "Driven by something? What do you mean?" "I mean," Arvind's voice dropped lower, "wasn't just hunger. That snake attacked with a purpose. It went straight for Ravi like it knew him, like it was hunting him." Ion stopped in his tracks. "You're saying the snake knew him?" Arvind nodded, his face serious. "I don't know how, but I've seen strange things happen in this jungle. Not all animals act by instinct. Some are controlled by something else, something darker." Ion shook his head, trying to make sense of it. Ravi had always been the protector. How could an animal like that be targeted so viciously? And by something as intelligent as this snake? But before he could ask more, one of the rangers called out from ahead, "Ion, Arvind, you need to see this." Ion and Arvind exchanged a look, then hurried toward the barn, where the ranger was waiting. The barn doors were open, and the barn was dimly lit. The ranger stood next to the pen, his face pale, eyes wide in disbelief. "What is it?" Ion asked, his voice thick with concern. The ranger stepped aside, pointing toward the far corner of the barn. Ion's breath caught in his throat. Ravi was standing there, his massive frame still, his body slumped against the wall. But it wasn't just that. The bull's eyes, they were different. Ion couldn't explain it, but there was something unsettling in Ravi's gaze. It was as if he was looking at them, but not truly seeing them. Something was off. Ion stepped forward, calling Ravi's name softly, but the bull didn't move. "Ravi," Ion said again, reaching out to touch the bull's neck, but Ravi didn't react. His body was still trembling slightly, but he didn't respond to Ion's touch. It was as though he was in a trance. His breathing was shallow, slower than usual. The silence was deafening as Ion looked around at the rangers, their faces filled with confusion and fear. "What's going on with him?" Ion asked, his voice hoarse. "I don't know," one of the rangers said, stepping closer. "But this isn't normal. It's like he's changed." Arvind stepped forward, his sharp eyes studying Ravi carefully. He didn't approach the bull just yet. Instead, he examined the air, the room, the energy in the space. His gaze flicked to the window, where the sunlight barely filtered through. Finally, Arvind spoke, his voice low. The snake didn't just attack Ravi, it marked him. Ion's stomach dropped. Marked him? What do you mean? Arvind didn't answer directly. He stepped closer to Ravi and knelt beside him. Slowly, with a careful hand, he touched the bull's forehead. Ion watched, breathless. Ravi didn't flinch. He didn't even react. Then, without warning, Ravi's eyes blinked. For a moment, Ion thought the bull was coming back to himself. But as Ravi's gaze met his, there was a deep, unfamiliar coldness in his eyes. And that's when Ion realized something. Ravi wasn't the same anymore. Ion stepped back, his heart pounding in his chest, as Ravi's eyes stared blankly at him. There was no recognition in those eyes, no warmth, no comfort. The familiar spark was gone. What was left was a cold, lifeless emptiness. What's happening to him? Ion's voice barely rose above a whisper. Arvind remained silent for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he studied the bull. Then, with a deep sigh, he stood up and turned toward Ion. "It's the mark," he said quietly, his tone grave. "The snake didn't just attack Ravi, it left something behind. A marker, kind of. Connection." Ion's mind raced, trying to process what Arvind was saying. A connection. What kind of connection? Arvind didn't answer right away. He looked down at the floor, as though weighing his words carefully. Finally, he spoke. "You've heard the stories, haven't you? About the jungle's old magic. Its forgotten power. There are ancient forces at play here. Forces that can control animals. That snake wasn't just a predator. It was a messenger, a part of something far greater. And now," Arvind paused, his eyes meeting Ion's. "Now, it's inside Ravi." Ion's stomach twisted with fear. What does that mean? Is Ravi possessed? Arvind shook his head, slowly, his expression somber. Not possessed, exactly, but the snake's influence is in him now. The same way it controlled the snake. Ravi is being controlled. Something has shifted within him. Something dark. Ion looked at Ravi, his heart breaking. This was the same bull that had always protected the sanctuary. That had been their strongest ally. He couldn't lose him, not like this. "I don't understand," Ion murmured. "How do we stop it?" Arvind's face tightened. "There's a ritual. It's the only way to break the snake's hold. But it's dangerous. And it's not guaranteed to work. The jungle will fight back. These forces are older than anything we know." Ion's mind spun. A ritual. What kind of ritual could undo something like this? And what did Arvind mean by the jungle fighting back? Then what are we waiting for? Ion demanded, his voice rising with urgency. "If we don't do something now, Ravi, he might not come back. He might be lost forever." Arvind was silent for a long moment. Then, with a deep sigh, he turned to face the rangers who had gathered in the barn, watching in silence. "Get the supplies. We're going into the heart of the jungle." Ion's eyes widened. "Into the jungle? But we can't just. We don't have a choice," Arvind interrupted. "The mark won't fade unless we confront it in its source. We need to go to the ancient grove, deep in the heart of the jungle. There, we can perform the ritual to sever the connection." Ion's chest tightened with fear. The heart of the jungle. That was a place even Arvind rarely went. The deep jungle was where the ancient, dangerous forces resided, where the jungle had never been tamed, where it held its oldest secrets. Ravi stirred, his head lifting slightly, as if hearing Arvind's words. His gaze shifted toward Ion, but there was nothing in his eyes but emptiness. "I'll go," Ion said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes. We can't lose him." Arvind gave him a sharp look, his eyes dark with warning. "It won't be easy. The jungle will test you. And if you fail the ritual, you may lose more than just Ravi." Ion felt a chill run down his spine, but he nodded. He had no choice. Ravi needed him. They had always protected each other. Now, it was his turn. The rangers gathered around, preparing their gear. Ion could feel the weight of the moment, the uncertainty, the fear, but there was no turning back now. "We leave at first light," Arvind said. "Get some rest. We'll need every ounce of strength we have." As the rangers left the barn, Ion stayed behind, looking at Ravi one last time. The bull had lowered his head again, his breath slow and labored, but his eyes were still empty and it felt like he was slipping away. Ion stepped closer to the bull, running his hand down Ravi's neck. "Don't worry, old friend," he whispered softly. "I won't let you go. Not like this." But deep down, Ion couldn't shake the feeling that the jungle had just begun to show its true power, and that what they were about to face could change everything. The air was thick with humidity as the first light of dawn broke through the canopy. Ion stood at the edge of the sanctuary, his eyes fixed on the dense jungle ahead. The trees loomed like silent giants, their roots winding into the earth, creating an almost impenetrable barrier. It felt as though the jungle itself was watching him. Waiting, Ravi was standing behind him, still in that strange, trance-like state. His body was trembling slightly, but those eyes were completely different now. Empty. It was as though his spirit was no longer there, replaced by something darker, something foreign. Ion's chest tightened at the sight of his once proud bull. He couldn't lose him, not like this. But deep down, a nagging fear settled in his gut. What if the jungle was too powerful? What if Arvind was right? What if the ritual failed? Arvind was already preparing the group, checking their gear, his expression unreadable. There was no hint of doubt in his eyes. He knew the risks. Ion couldn't help but admire his calm, though it made him nervous. Arvind had always been mysterious, but now, there was an air of finality about him, as though he was preparing for something he knew they couldn't return from. Ready? Arvind asked, turning to a YAAN and nodded, though his throat felt tight. Ready? The journey into the jungle was harder than he had imagined. The air felt heavy, thick with the smell of wet earth and decay. The path was narrow and twisted, hidden under layers of vines and thick underbrush. The deeper they went, the quieter it became, until even the birds seemed to stop singing, as though the jungle itself was holding its breath. Ravi walked beside them, his steps slow and unsteady, but still with the heavy weight of his massive frame. Ion kept a close eye on him, his hand hovering just over the bull's neck, ready to catch him if he fell. Every now and then, the bull would shudder, as though a wave of discomfort washed over him. His eyes would flicker, just for a second, showing a hint of recognition, before the emptiness would return. Ion had to keep his focus. They had to reach the heart of the jungle. Arvind led the way, cutting through the dense foliage with a machete. His movements were fluid. Practiced, he had walked these paths many times before. But the closer they got to their destination, the more Ion felt the tension in the air. It wasn't just the jungle's oppressive atmosphere. It was something else. Something that seemed to be closing in around them. They passed through an area where the trees were so thick that the light barely touched the ground. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the distant call of unknown creatures. It felt wrong, almost like the jungle itself was alive, watching, waiting for something. "We're close," Arvind said suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. Ion looked around, but he could see nothing in the gloom ahead. "Close to what?" "The grove," Arvind replied. "The source. It's just ahead. But be prepared. The jungle won't make it easy." Ion's heart skipped a beat. The source. What did that mean? What was the source? Before he could ask, the trees began to thin, revealing a strange clearing. At the center stood an ancient grove. The trees twisted in unnatural shapes, their roots reaching up from the earth like fingers trying to claw their way out of the ground. The air here was thick, heavy, and the silence was almost suffocating. Arvind stopped, his eyes scanning the grove. "This is it," he said, his voice barely a murmur. "This is where it all began." Ion's stomach twisted. There was something unsettling about this place, something ancient and powerful. It was as if the earth beneath his feet was alive with energy, and the trees themselves were watching. Ravi let out a low, rumbling sound. His body shuddered again, but this time, Ion noticed something even stranger. There was a flicker of recognition in the bull's flash of the old Ravi, the one he knew and trusted. "Ravi," Ion whispered, stepping closer to the bull. "Can you hear me?" The bull's head lifted slightly, and for a moment, it was like the connection between them was re-established. But then, the emptiness returned to Ravi's gaze, and Ion's heart sank. The ritual had to happen now, before it was too late. Arvind turned to him, his face serious. "We don't have much time," he said. "Get ready." As the group made their way into the heart of the grove, the ground beneath their feet seemed to hum with energy. The trees surrounding them groaned, their twisted branches creaking as though the jungle itself was waking up. Ion felt a shiver run down his spine. Suddenly, a low rumbling sound echoed from deep within the grove. Ion's pulse quickened. It wasn't just the wind. Something was moving in the shadows. Ion's breath hitched as a figure emerged from the trees, a dark shape, almost indistinguishable from the shadows themselves. It was tall, its form cloaked in darkness, with eyes that glowed like burning embers. The jungle wasn't just watching them. It was alive, and it wasn't going to let them leave without a fight. The figure emerged from the shadows with an almost unnatural grace, its eyes glowing in the gloom. It was taller than any man should be, with long limbs that seemed to stretch and twist like the roots of the ancient trees around them. Its body was draped in dark, tattered robes that flowed like smoke, obscuring much of its form. But the eyes, those glowing eyes, were unmistakable. Ion's heart pounded in his chest. He felt an icy coldness settle over the grove, an unnatural stillness that sent a wave of dread through him. This wasn't just a creature of the jungle. This was something else, something ancient, a guardian, a force. "Who are you?" Ion demanded, though his voice trembled despite his effort to stay calm. His hand instinctively reached for his knife, though he knew it was no match for whatever this was. The figure didn't speak right away. It just stood there, its glowing eyes fixed on Ion and the group, as though assessing them. Then, in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once, the figure spoke, its tone like a whisper on the wind, echoing in Ion's mind. "The jungle does not belong to you. It never has. It is alive and it has awakened." Ion felt the words press against his chest, suffocating him. He didn't understand. What did it mean? The jungle awakened. Arvin stepped forward, his expression calm, though there was a flicker of wariness in his eyes. "We're not here to claim it. We're here to break the bond between the bull and the serpent." The figure's glowing eyes flickered briefly, as if considering Arvin's words. Then, it took a slow step forward. "You seek to sever the connection, but the serpent is part of the jungle now. It has bound itself to the bull. To take it away is to disrupt the balance, to disturb what should remain." Ion's mind raced. The serpent had attacked Ravi for a reason. Something had changed. But if the jungle itself was fighting back, how could they break the bond? "The ritual must be done," Arvin said, his voice steady but carrying an edge of urgency. "It's the only way to save him." The figure's eyes flashed, and a low, guttural growl rumbled from deep within its chest. "You cannot save what is already claimed. Ravi belongs to the jungle now. His spirit is intertwined with the serpent. If you break that, you will lose more than just the bull." Ion felt his blood run cold. Lose more than just Ravi. What did that mean? "I won't lose him," Ion said firmly, though his voice betrayed his fear. "Ravi is my friend. I'll do whatever it takes." The figure's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, it seemed as if it was considering Ion's resolve. Then, in a swift motion, the shadowy figure raised its hand, and the ground beneath them trembled. Suddenly, the air grew thick, heavy with an overwhelming presence. The trees groaned, their branches creaking as if they were alive and bending under some unseen force. Ion's breath caught in his throat as the jungle seemed to close in around them, the leaves rustling like whispers, the ground shifting beneath his feet. Ravi stirred beside him, his head lifting once more, but this time, the bull's eyes were wild, his pupils dilated, and his body was shaking violently. Something had triggered him. The bond, whatever it was pulling him in. Ion grabbed Ravi's massive horn, trying to steady him, but the bull was no longer in control. The serpent's influence was overtaking him once more. "You have no idea what you are dealing with," the figure said, its voice suddenly laced with a dark amusement. "The jungle cannot be tamed. It cannot be saved. It only survives." The ground beneath them cracked open, revealing dark, twisted roots that seemed to rise up from the earth itself, reaching for the group like claws. Ion stumbled backward, pulling Ravi with him, but the bull was thrashing, his body shuddering under the weight of the power now surging through him. The shadowy figure stepped forward, its presence overwhelming. "If you wish to sever the connection, you must face the jungle itself. The ritual will demand a sacrifice." Ion's eyes widened. A sacrifice? What kind of sacrifice? Before he could respond, the ground beneath them split wide open, and a deep, echoing rumble filled the air. Something ancient, something powerful, was stirring beneath them. A torrent of energy pulsed through the jungle, and the trees seemed to bend and sway, as if alive with hunger. The figure raised its hand once more, and Ravi gave a final, deafening roar, a cry that sounded almost human. His body was caught in the midst of the jungle's will, a force that fought to drag him into its heart. Ion felt the pull. A powerful magnetic force seemed to surge around him, threatening to tear him apart. His grip on Ravi's horn tightened, but the bull's body was becoming too heavy, too rigid. The sacrifice had begun. Ion's voice rose in desperation. "Arvind, help me." But Arvind was already moving, rushing forward with the ceremonial tools, the relics for the ritual, glowing faintly in his hands. The rangers stood at the edges of the grove, uncertain. As the jungle itself seemed to fight back with everything it had, the shadowy figure laughed. A low, cruel sound that echoed through the trees. The ritual is already in motion. It is too late to turn back now. Ion's heart thundered in his chest. He didn't know what would happen next, but he had to stop this. He had to save Ravi, no matter what the jungle demanded. Ion's world seemed to blur around him as the jungle pressed in. The trees were no longer just trees, they were writhing, twisting, reaching for him with long, gnarled limbs, as though the entire forest was alive, trying to pull him into its dark heart. The ground beneath his feet trembled violently, the earth groaning with an ancient hunger. Ravi's body was convulsing beside him, the bull fighting against something invisible, something far stronger than his physical form. Arvind was moving, quickly, his hands steady, as he set the ritual tools down on the ground. The air crackled with tension, a humming energy that vibrated through Ion's bones. Arvind's face was grim, his eyes locked on the ancient markings carved into the earth. "We need to complete it," Arvind said, his voice strained. "Before it consumes him completely." Ion barely heard him. His mind was spinning, his thoughts racing. The jungle had already claimed Ravi, he could feel it. The bull was shaking, his eyes wild, but there was no recognition in them. It was as if the bond between them had been shattered, leaving nothing but a hollow shell. But Ion couldn't let it end this way. He wouldn't. Ravi, Ion shouted, desperate. He tried to step forward, but the air itself felt like it was pushing him back. The jungle was resisting him, holding him in place with invisible hands. His body felt like it was made of stone, the weight of the jungle's will bearing down on him. But still, he reached out, calling to the bull. Ravi's head turned, his eyes flashing with something, a fleeting moment of recognition. Just a second, the old Ravi seemed to return. The bull's body tensed, his muscles straining, but the dark force was still there, pulling him away. "Don't give in," Ion screamed, his voice raw with emotion. "Fight, Ravi, fight for us." The bull let out another heart-wrenching cry, a sound of pain, of fear, of desperation. It echoed through the grove, and for a moment, the jungle seemed to pause. The air hung heavy with anticipation, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Arvind moved quickly, chanting words under his breath, his hands moving in intricate patterns above the ritual tools. Ion didn't know the language, but he felt the power building, crackling in the air around them. He could feel it in his chest, vibrating with energy. But just as the ritual seemed to be gaining momentum, the figure, the shadowy guardian, raised its hand, and a violent wind swept through the grove. It howled like a beast, rattling the trees and pushing against the group. The ground split open even further, and a massive, dark tendril of roots shot up from the earth, twisting and curling like a serpent. The jungle was fighting back, trying to destroy the ritual before it could be completed. "You cannot win," the figure said, its voice low and filled with malice. "The jungle will claim what is its own. Ravi is no longer yours. He is ours." Ion's heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the bond, the pull between him and Ravi growing weaker, and the dread settled in his stomach. Was this really the end? But then, something strange happened. Ravi's body stopped shaking. The bull stood still, his eyes wide, staring at Ion, as though a flicker of recognition crossed them again. Ion's breath caught in his throat. It was brief, but it was enough. Ravi wasn't completely lost. "Ravi," Ion cried, his voice breaking. "Come back, fight." The bull's head lifted slowly, his hooves stamping the ground with a force that rattled the earth. The jungle around them groaned in protest, but Ravi was standing tall, again more aware, more present. And then, as if answering some silent command, the dark tendrils of roots surged forward, reaching for Ravi, trying to claim him. But this time, the bull didn't retreat. He fought back. His massive body trembled with effort, his legs digging into the ground as he charged forward, breaking through the jungle's grasp. His roar shattered the silence, a defiant cry that rang through the grove. Ayan, filled with a surge of hope, ran to his side, grabbing hold of the bull's horn. "We're almost there, Ravi," he yelled, as the jungle continued to battle against them. Arvind, seeing the struggle, chanted louder, his voice rising over the wind and the groaning trees. "This is the final step," he shouted. "You have to sever the bond." Ion turned to the tracker, his heart racing. Arvind's words felt like a distant echo, but in that moment, he understood. He had to do it. He had to finish the ritual. It was the only way. With one final, desperate effort, Ion pressed his hand to Ravi's forehead, feeling the raw energy pulsing beneath his fingers. "I won't lose you," he whispered. The bull's body shuddered again, but this time, it wasn't in pain. It was as if the two of them, man and beast, were finally in sync. The bond, so tightly woven, began to unravel. Slowly, piece by piece, the dark influence that had been suffocating Ravi started to fade. But it wasn't painless. The earth beneath them cracked open with a deafening roar, and the jungle seemed to scream in agony. The shadowy figure's form flickered, its eyes burning with rage. "You cannot stop what is inevitable," it bellowed, but its voice was weakening, the darkness dissipating with every passing second. Ion held on, his heart in his throat, as the power of the ritual surged through the air. The jungle was resisting, them fighting with everything it had, but Ravi was breaking free. The dark influence was finally breaking apart, and then, with one last earth-shattering cry, Ravi reared up, shaking the jungle's grip from him completely. The shadowy figure, weakened and furious, let out a final guttural scream before it vanished into the ether, leaving only the trembling, silent grove behind. Ion collapsed to his knees, exhaustion flooding over him. Ravi stood beside him, his breathing heavy but steady, his eyes now clear. The dark, empty void was gone. It was over.